Well, good afternoon, and we're going to call this meeting to order of the Executive Committee for WRCOG on September 13th. Can we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'm going to ask our new CEO to lead us.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dennis, can you please conduct roll call?
Absolutely. When I call your jurisdiction, if you would please state your name. City of Banning.
David Happy, present.
Beaumont.
Mike Laura, present.
Calamasa.
Wendy Hewitt here.
Canyon Lake.
Casey Castillo here.
Corona. City of Corona, I believe they're joining us right now.
Present.
Thank you, ma'am. Eastville.
Christian Dinko present.
Hemet. Europa Valley.
Chris Barajas.
Lake Elsinore.
Brian Tisdale.
Menifee.
Matt Leesmeyer.
Moreno Valley.
Victoria Baca.
Murrieta.
Lori Stone.
Norco.
Kevin Bash.
Paris.
Rita Rogers here.
Riverside.
Ronaldo Fierro here.
Temecula. San Jacinto.
Crystal Ruins here.
Wildemar.
Ben Benoit here.
County of Riverside, District 1.
Kevin Jeffries here.
District 2.
Aaron Spiegel here.
District 3.
Chuck Washington here.
District 5.
Jeff Hewitt here.
Eastern Municipal Water District.
Bill Pauly on behalf of Eastern.
Western Municipal Water District.
Brenda Deadstead, good afternoon.
Riverside County Superintendent of Schools. WRCOG TAC Chair. Let's go back one more time to those who did not answer. City of Hemet. City of Temecula. All right, that concludes roll call and we have quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments at this time?
I have no requests.
Is there anybody here that would like to make a public comment?
I see no hands raised.
Okay. We're going to move on to the consent calendar, which are routine items enacted by one motion. Is there anybody wishing to pull any items on the consent?
I see no hands raised.
Motion approved, Menifee.
Second, Moreno Valley.
Okay.
City
Roll
of
call.
Banning. Thank you. City of Banning.
Yes.
Beaumont.
Yes.
Calamasa.
Yes.
Canyon Lake.
Yes.
Corona.
Yes.
Eastville. City of Eastville. Hemet. Europa Valley.
Yes.
Lake Elsinore.
Yes.
Menifee.
Yes.
Moreno Valley.
Yes.
Murrieta.
Yes.
Norco.
Yes.
Paris.
Yes.
Riverside.
Yes.
San Jacinto.
Yes.
Temecula. Wildemar.
Yes.
County District 1.
Yes.
District 2.
Yes.
District 3.
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District.
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
That concludes roll call vote for that item and it passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll begin with our report items. The first one is Cal City's activities update. Aaron?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Executive Committee members. It's nice to see all of you. I just wanted to give you an update on the end of session activities. The legislature did end on Friday night. Not a ton of surprises, but there are a few things I would like to highlight. SB 9, which is the housing bill that we've been talking about this whole year, did make it out of the legislature and is on the governor's desk. I know many of you signed on to our coalition letter that we did submit to him. Definitely want to encourage you all to send in veto letters on that. I will say it's likely that he will sign it though, but he definitely needs to hear all of your opposition. AB 215 is another housing bill that I've talked about extensively. Basically, that would have required you to have a mid-session review consultation with HCD if your housing production is less than the regional average. That bill was amended and they took out the mid-cycle review, but they did increase some of the HCD's enforcement capabilities. So it actually got worse and it did make it to the governor's desk. So you definitely should be expressing your opinion on that, because the real concern is when you have to do the regional average, it puts a lot of cities at a disadvantage because you may never be able to meet that regional average. So if you haven't looked at that one, I definitely encourage you to do so. The last housing bill I wanted to mention was AB 989. I did bring this one up in the past. It would create a housing appeals committee. One good news is that this one was actually killed for the year. So it's gone for this year. It didn't make it to the governor, but it will likely be back next year. There was broadband bills that we've been supporting that provided funding for all of you for the middle mile, the last mile. Surprisingly, there's been no opposition until the very end of session. And then we did have some struggles with it, but they did pass out of the legislature and are now moving to the governor. So definitely good news, because we know all of you need some of that funding for the broadband infrastructure. The street light poles bill, SB 556, was amended basically to allow telecommunications companies to return with a remedy if you deny their permit requests. This is actually going above what the FCC requires. So we're still opposed. It did make it out of the legislature. It's on the governor's desk as well. SB 619 is the organic waste bill that we were supporting. It was the extension of the penalties for the SB 1383 implementation. That one was in flux a good part of this year. It was amended again. Basically, it became a cow recycle bill that if you provide information explaining your status and that you may not be able to meet the deadlines, then they wouldn't enforce the penalties through 2022. We also were seeking funding. We had requested $250 million to help all of you with implementation. In the last couple of days, they did add $60 million in a budget trailer bill. So $60 million is definitely not $250 million, but at least it's a little bit of funding that can help with your implementation costs. Just a couple more. SB 60 did make it through the legislature and is enrolled to the governor. This is one we were supporting. This would allow cities and counties to impose larger fines for short-term rental ordinance violations. So you would now be able to have up to $5,000 for each violation. So that's definitely one that we're supporting, and that's good. And lastly, I wanted to bring up the two Brown Act bills. So there's AB 361, which would allow for the continuance of some of the virtual meeting options, as long as there's a declared state of emergency. That did make it out of the legislature. It's a little complicated because there's chaptering language that now ties it in a way to AB 339. AB 339 requires the larger cities, so those cities with 250,000 or more, so really just the city of Riverside, you'll have to provide in-person and telecommunication options. So what the tie means with this one is, for just the city of Riverside, you could still have virtual options, but you'll still have to have somebody in the city to conduct some of the in-person options. So we were opposed to that one. It did make it to the governor. AB 361 also was amended to include the state, but the state requirements aren't quite the same as the city and county requirements. The state requirements follow the governor's executive order, and we have a little bit more restrictions on what we're allowed to do. So there was a little bit of opposition from some of the legislators because of that, but it did make it through. Urgency was added, which was very good news. So as soon as the governor signs it, this will go into effect. He does have until October 10th, but we're hoping that he signs this one because the executive order ends September 30th. So this one really would need to get signed in order to continue virtual meeting options for all of our cities after the September 30th date. So with that, we do have a webinar coming up on Thursday at 10 a.m. It's our sign and veto webinar. So if any of you are interested in hearing about these bills and others, feel free to register for that. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Janice, do we have any public comments or questions?
No, ma'am.
Last chance. Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Erin. Always informative. Our next item is our SCAG update from our SCAG president, who happens to be part of our WRCOG, City of Eastvale. Is Clint on?
I am.
Good.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. And all of the members of WRCOG and Dr. Wilson, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I actually also have a SCAG staff member here with me, but my name is Clint Lorimore, council member in the City of East, member of WRCOG. Good to see a Christian on the line. But I also serve as president of SCAG. And SCAG, for those of you that don't know, is Southern California Association of Governments, and it is comprised of 6 counties, 191 cities, and if you look at it, we're 19.1 million people overall. We focus on issues of housing, transportation, greenhouse gas reductions, and so but we are a convener of sorts. And I have some things that we'll go through here today, but as a region, if we were our own country, we would represent the 15th largest economy in the world, or $1.2 trillion of the nation's GDP. So the thing that I like to say, and when we're talking about WRCOG and SCAG, there are issues that we need to work collaboratively on. SCAG is the country's largest metropolitan planning organization, meaning that we focus on planning, working together. So because we as individual cities are not islands unto ourselves, and working collaboratively, and it will tie into some of the discussion actually earlier from Aaron with the league. When we come together, we are stronger. So really quickly here, we do have SCAG is, as mentioned, a metropolitan planning organization and a very large entity, a lot of moving parts. But SCAG is, us. You are SCAG, we are SCAG, and what I mean by that, we from WRCOG, we have our chair, Karen Spiegel, we have Crystal Ruiz, Ben Benoit, Victoria Baca, a recent appointment of Jonathan Ingram, who sit on our regional council and policy committees. And this is where we, particularly on the policy committees, really dive into the issues and then hash it out at the regional council level. And recently, SCAG went through and conducted a strategic planning workshop with its executive committee. And one of those, one of the key takeaways from that, and this is going to move into our larger overall update of our strategic plan at SCAG, is to have closer relationships with our regional partners. And so WRCOG being one of those, this is the first of these sorts of outreach, and looking forward to the time when we're doing these actually in person. But later on, I'm going to ask you for some feedback, because that's what this is about. We're going to be going out to all the COGs in the region, the transportation agencies. But I'm very happy that WRCOG is #1 on the list for this. So I want to jump ahead. So Connect SoCal. Some of you may have heard about this. Also, many people understand it to be another acronym, the RTP SCS. SCAG goes into this process every 4-8 years. We revisit this, and it also ties into what we'll talk about a little bit later, RENA. But Connect SoCal, we have some implementation resources, and basically to aid your jurisdiction's WRCOG in helping to implement this. And so some of these include a call for collaboration. So opportunities to work directly with cities to provide funding and guidance to projects and programs that help us meet the Connect SoCal priorities. Go Human, some of you may have seen this, some of you may have these projects in your cities. It helps to make cities, the streets safer. And one of the things we just did a project, an unveiling out in Long Beach. It was very cool, all-day event, and it was highlighting the work making the streets safer there on Artesia Boulevard. And one of the things that I would like to do is get out to cities in the region that have programs that they would like to highlight, showcase the good work that WRCOG, SCAG, local jurisdictions here in Western Riverside County have come together right on. So if any of you have these projects in your cities, please reach out to me. Would really love to come out and showcase on social media, on SCAGs, on mine, on yours, and really highlight the good work that collectively we are able to do. RENA resources. RENA, everybody's favorite topic, regional housing needs assessment. And of course, this is state mandated. This is part of what we have to go through, and as a result, update our housing elements, which I know is a whole lot of fun. We're doing that right now in the city of Eastvale, and I think that all of you were doing similar things, and it can get contentious. This year's numbers were very large that came down from HCD. And in fact, SCAG did protest those numbers, and it resulted in a slight change, but over one, I think it's 1.3 million, but at that point, you know, it's a large number. The thing about RENA and the numbers that have been provided, a change of methodology on the 6th cycle took place here, which mixed it up a little bit compared to previous cycles, where the Inland Empire generally received the brunt of housing unit allocations. This has changed in that it went out more towards the coast this time around, towards job centers, towards high transit rich areas. And this is designed to help curb GHG, greenhouse gas emission reductions. And so that is, we can talk about it more, but SCAG does provide resources for this. So back in 2019 with AB 101, the state allocated $250 million to housing and land use planning policies, which SCAG is able to work with local jurisdictions on. LEAP and REAP, $125 million was allocated to cities for helping to update their housing plan elements. So we can talk about that if you guys would like. There are a number of things that SCAG does, and I could keep going into them. I have many more pages of notes here, but I'm gonna actually, the real reason that I wanted to have this meeting was to get your feedback, things that we can work better with WRCOG on, with your local jurisdictions, as to how we at SCAG can help facilitate that. As you all know, well, I like to say we're coming out of it. We're coming out of this pandemic a little bit more slowly than I think any of us would like, but we need to position ourselves to be able to do this in the right way, to recover effectively. And SCAG, I would like to see SCAG provide those resources to help jurisdictions set themselves in a place to, well, come out of this in a strong way, come out of this stronger than before we even went into this pandemic. So I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear from you guys. What is it that SCAG can do, that we can do together to help make this region, your city, better? And any of the other things I talked about, fair game. I'm open for questions. Good to be here, guys.
Janice, does anybody have their hand up? I can't see up here.
No one has their hand raised.
Does anybody have any questions for Clint? Now's the time. Got a bunch of shy folks here, Clint. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Well, one of the things that we're going to be doing.
I got one then.
All right, Mr. Dinko.
This is Christian Dinko from Eastville. Clint and I see each other all the time. I guess we could talk, but I got one question. I guess we could do it here in the group. Is there any way to tell on the distribution between Northern California and Southern California? Are we getting it any worse in Northern? Is it the same? Or when you overall look at those numbers, what do you see? Do you see any trends that we're more negatively impacted than NorCal? Or is it the same?
You know, Christian, to be honest, I didn't look at their numbers, but the numbers that we did receive, we're not happy with them. We're making do. Because we all know that we need, I believe you're talking about Reno, right, sir?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah. Okay. So the short answer is I don't know exactly what their numbers were provided. The numbers that we did receive, they're not by anything that we as a region were excited about. In fact, we submitted a much lower number, which resulted in the state telling us no and giving us a much higher number than the one that was submitted. SCAG appealed those numbers, and there was a very slight adjustment to them, and that was really it as to how much we were able to do. The thing about RENA is we as jurisdictions, we do not build these units, right? This is about planning for this future growth. And so many jurisdictions, including Eastville, who built a great deal over this last RENA cycle, did not meet its past RENA numbers. But we did plan for it, and that is what is being asked by the state, that they're asking that we plan for these things. Now, as we move forward, the state is looking to add that there have been different laws that have been coming down, those laws or discussion about future laws, where there may be more teeth associated with not meeting RENA goals, specifically on transportation, et cetera. Thankfully, that has not happened. One thing that I would like to highlight, though, and what I mentioned earlier with Aaron's talk, two bills. SB 9, and I'm sure everybody here is familiar with that. That's the one about dividing lots and then subdividing multi-units and single-family zones. That has made it to the governor's office. We at SCAG put forward a number of opposition letters, and once it did pass, we have submitted a veto appeal to the governor letter, and we also met with the governor's staff just this last week. And while Aaron said things do not look good, I feel that we got our message across at this meeting last week, and for AB 215, I believe it is, SCAG is also advocating against that. So also with a veto letter that will be, I think, going out today. But so it's a good question, Christian. Nobody's happy with these numbers. At the end of the day, we are not tasked with building them, but we are tasked with planning for them. So, but I like your question. I'm gonna have to go back and see the exact breakdown of the split. But we do.
That's all right, Clint. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just was really expressing the frustration, but I think you're doing a great job. Just
I appreciate
for
it,
my
sir.
Eastville friend.
and likewise, my friend.
Committee member Washington has his hand raised.
Supervisor, sir,
Hey,
how are you?
Clint, congratulations on your being elected president. Something I always aspired to be president.
Well,
President Washington.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. We need to make
Has a
this.
nice ring to it, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely.
Well, actually, I'm going to get to have that title one more time. In 2 years, I will be president of the State Association of Counties. But for now, I'm the second VP. But one of the things that I've become very familiar with and acquainted with is breakdowns of counties and their where they are up and down the state. I have supervisor friends up and down the state. And I think what sometimes may go unrecognized, and this is to address perhaps Christian's question, is that the 5-county region of LA, Orange, San Diego, Riverside, and San Bernardino make up half of the state's population. LA County alone makes up 1/4 of the state's population. 1 in 4 people who live in California live in LA County. And so I think it bears keeping in mind that when numbers come our way, rather than looking at perhaps what are they getting in the Bay Area, and I know I feel the same way at times, like we're not getting our fair share, but also the sheer size of Southern California and our urban densities is probably why some of the burden of housing falls on us. For me, as a county supervisor, I remain committed to, and I've expressed this to you in the past, I remain committed to finding ways to provide affordable housing for families so that they're not priced out of the market. So that's not really a question, just a statement. But again, congratulations.
And future congratulations on being president of Washington.
And committee member Edwards has her hand raised.
Thank you. So piling on with Supervisor Washington, there has to be a fixed formula that they use. And if we feel like we are not being treated fairly, or that they're considering Northern California in a different way that's not included in a particular formula than they're considering Southern California, then we need to do something about it. So it should be fairly easy to determine what and how they are, determining the fees for each one. And is it fair? And if it isn't fair, that's when we have to decide how far do we want to go. Do you want to go all the way to, filing a lawsuit? You file a formal complaint. I don't know what the process is, but there should be a way to figure this out. And if we're not being treated fairly, then we need to do something about it. And as Supervisor Washington said, with the largest population, or at least half of the population being represented by SCAG, we should be able to pull some weight here. So it's difficult to understand how the same cities or the same counties feel like you're getting shortchanged, as it were, when it comes to RENA. So I don't know, Clint, has SCAG actually done a study of how our numbers are determined versus how they determine Northern California?
Well, again, I wish that I had those numbers in front of me, and I'm going to have to get back to you as to the breakdown between Northern and Southern California. There is one of the governor, one of his stated goals was housing, right? And as for many of us, housing taken care of, as Supervisor Washington talked about, creating housing for all, and it is something that we need to do. As for this fairness of breakdown of resources, we, in the past, SCAG have continually argued for, champion to have a more equitable breakdown of how things are distributed, particularly monies coming down to between Northern and Southern California. And in the past, unfortunately, at least in terms of monies, the state has split this between a little bit geared more towards Northern California. And that's the thing too, that we need more tools, right? And less rules coming out of Sacramento. And a big part of that is distribution of dollars coming down. But one thing, this cycle in that I mentioned the governor earlier as to housing, and unfortunately, I would agree. I feel that this cycle has become a little bit more political. And there was an article, actually an interview with the Sacramento Bee a little while back. And I encourage everybody to check it out. The governor was being interviewed and it's on video. And he's not happy with SCAG for us arguing our positions. And I think that the methodology, this is me speaking personally, the methodology that HCD used or didn't use and just threw back number on us. Again, me speaking personally, it does seem very politically motivated. And that interview with the governor, where he's talking about the SCAG region, you can see the frustration in his face and how he actually states that, they went after SCAG for not being willing to build enough units, which is actually an unfair assessment in terms of where SCAG stands and its pro-housing policies. In that there are a number of bills. I don't have them in front of me, but I can grab them, but that SCAG is supported, that are good for our region, and that we are working to meet our housing needs. But again, I encourage you I do believe, again, me speaking personally, that the question of methodology, this lean more towards political this time around, but we're working through it. And again, at the end of the day, for RENA, we do not have to build, but we do need to plan, and planning is never a bad thing.
I'm going to jump in real quick, Clint.
Yeah.
Mayor Edwards, just so you know, Clint isn't giving a full picture of how much we did push back. And we had Riverside and LA mayors partnering, all of the big cities partnered. It was a major push, and down here within Southern California, as Clint mentioned, it was the the coast that was wanting no numbers and pushing it all out to Riverside County.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, it got pretty ugly within SCAG itself, but we pushed back. I think many entities had rebuked on the numbers that were given to us. And we shifted it a little bit within Southern California. Those cities that wanted to take on more helped offset that. We had some cities that would have, I can't remember what the numbers were, but they were just outrageous, the amounts that were put into Riverside County, and very few into Orange County. So there was a little bit of that challenge going on. But I do want to just say is that SCAG representatives as a whole, and we've got several of them on this call right now, and Kevin's speaking next, really pushed back tremendously. And I know Clint's saying we did, but it was a strong pushback. And that's why the governor started going after Riverside County as well as the SCAG region, because we were very strongly opinionated.
Well, I appreciate that. And, it may come down to SCAG versus, SCAG cities versus other SCAG cities. And that's what it sounds like.
We went through that, but we came together at the end with a unified, and other cities taking some of the numbers. LA took quite a few, and sorry, Patricia, you weren't involved with it, but Riverside took quite a bit. And so we pushed back within SCAG itself, but we came together strong to go against the state as what the expectation was. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And that's good. I think we're caught between a rock and a hard place in that regard. But thank you for the explanation. I wouldn't want to think that, and I don't think that Riverside County would just, roll over. It's not in our nature to do that.
So, Mary Ann, Mayor, Karen also, well, she's touching on it and sharing that it was contentious, and it really was. But Riverside actually, under the former Mayor Bailey, came up with a different methodology, which SCAG actually adopted, which changed where within Southern California the numbers were allocated. And which did push it more towards, as stated earlier, towards the job centers, which unfortunately we are not yet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kevin Bash.
You're on mute, Kevin.
You all are aware of this. When I hear that the governor is pushing back, when I hear these kind of things, he's pushing back against the people that live in these areas, and I really resent the HCD because they are kind of like the Gestapo. We have our own agent. We were just forced to permit a 320 unit apartment complex in Norco. That's a fifth of our population. And it really makes me angry because the common sense, when they say health and safety, the common sense is gone. I mean, that whole A through F thing, the corner where this is going is an F, which means you can drop 100,000 cars on that corner because you won't make it any worse. That's how ridiculous this has gotten. And I'm increasingly disappointed. SCAG, Mayor Bailey hosed Norco. And, we had some fairly reasonable numbers prior to that, and I don't know why we're tolerating this, because the residents don't understand it. They blame the front line, and what they don't realize is the governor is taking away their voice from the podium. All of us live in cities that took decades to create our zoning, decades. And I know, again, you all know what I'm saying, but why are we taking it? Why? And I don't understand why we don't say, look, some of you guys that are pushing these things, you ought to be talking to us about how to run your cities. I have clean water. I don't have people laying in the street, putting lots of money into homeless. We're working right now on 600 low-income residences that are homes, but we will get no credit for them whatsoever. Because the way the rules are, you get credit for 15 this year, 15 that year, yet we're bringing all of these secondary units into compliance. And I don't know why we all stand around and go, oh, we're between a rock, no offense, Mary Ann, but we're between a rock and a hard place, and we are the majority. I mean, what was it, 240 cities just came out against SB 9? I guess I just don't understand why we're not fighting it, why we're not saying, no. We talk about water. We have a water report from the city of Norco that says we can supply water to 3 times our population for the next 10 years. That is nonsense. And you start adding all the other places that are going to need water, people are just not, it's like common sense is gone. So forgive my frustration. It's because I'm in the middle of having to approve an apartment complex in Norco. I just don't understand why we're not fighting. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only voice. We're not coming together. I wanted SCAG to say no and let them sue us. I mean, sue every city in the state of California. And then the other thing I don't like is a lot of the people coming up with these exemptions live in the coastal areas, live in historic districts. So they're exempt from a lot of this nonsense that's happening. So, I guess you got to know my favorite movie is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and there's the only causes worth fighting are the losing ones. So
make it Mr. Bash Goes to Washington.
yeah. Anyway, I know you all know what I just said, but truthfully, Sacramento They have gone insane. They're absolutely, you can't, if you've been in council for 5 to 10 years, you know what they're doing will not work. They also need to trust us. I'll bet there's not one person that's listening to my voice that doesn't want to create affordable housing, but they're not creating that. And so, anyway, that's my 2 cents. So get out there, Clint. Say no.
Actually, we did.
We
But we voted and we couldn't get enough cities to go in opposition. So we tried that.
All right, so I guess there's more cities out there that have, I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and somebody
Okay,
needs
one
to
more.
give
We
you a
have one more
bullhorn.
at this time. Crystal.
President Clint Lorimer, congratulations, first of all. What an accomplishment, especially after the incident with the other organization. And all of us in Riverside County, we know how that goes. So I'm proud of you. You know, you asked an open-ended question and you got straight shooting from these elected officials. And you know, whenever you come here that we're gonna do that.
Love it.
I think now is the time to see the change in SCAG that we want to see. You have the opportunity to make that happen. Reaching out to us is really important. Reaching out to us individually and as smaller groups, huge deal. We're all against Rena. You know how I was at the meetings up there. I let them have it with both barrels, and at least we got them to change what we needed to change, at least something, because they were really after more. They wanted to shove everybody down here. But there is so much more going on in SCAG than just Rena, and we need to talk about it. This is obviously not the time because we don't have enough time. But I think you should get together, and there's a couple things I think you should do. One is plan, getting together with all of us, even if it's little groups at a time like this. That's a great opportunity for us to let you know what we're thinking, but it's also a good opportunity for you to go, hey, these are the things that are upcoming. What do you want to see happen? And I'd also like you to see you reaching out to each of the cities and saying, hey, we need some more representatives over here at SCAG. We'd like for you to join SCAG. And then when they come, show them what SCAG's all about. Show them what they can do. Because when you first get to SCAG, it's a huge organization, and it's kind of overwhelming. You're kind of like, wow, this is just a lot of elected officials, a lot of egos. How do you manipulate this? How do you work through this process? It would be a great thing for you to put together some type of program that you could help facilitate these people who are up and coming. We know that you've already made president. We know you're going further, but we need to bring somebody up to replace you. So congratulations again, and thank you for being here.
Okay.
Thank you, Crystal. Great comments. And also, a very interesting thing has happened this time around at SCAG in terms of leadership that I want to highlight. So, as you mentioned, SCAG is a very large organization, and part of the reason that I held this strategic planning workshop a little while back to get feedback from the executive committee, which will be going to the larger regional council with the strategic plan update, is that the presidency goes by very quickly. And so having a game plan from which to work that will cross over presidencies was the intent of doing this strategic plan workshop. And not from Western Riverside County, but this is the interesting thing that doesn't happen very often, but is happening this once in a blue moon here at SCAG, is that we're going to have next year, our first vice president right now is Jan Harnick so she will be president next year, and hopefully carrying forward, because she was part of the strategic plan update, carrying forward the same goals as we move forward. And I wanted to highlight this because we have a Riverside Voice 2 years in a row, albeit from the Coachella Valley and the westernmost city in Riverside County. I think there's a lot that we can do over this period of time. And I agree with everything that you just said. I love those ideas, and expect a call from me later this week. But
Oh, my personal cell, not my other one.
you got it. You got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
District 5 has his hand raised.
Supervisor, how are you, sir?
Can I still call you Clint now that you got that new title?
Yeah, or what? Tomorrow we're going to call you governor, right?
There you go. So I'll tell you what, I understand that Riverside grew the most in this last census or something of any of the counties in California. It certainly was one of the biggest growing. And we should, again, no good deed goes unpunished. We should be in the favor of Sacramento because we've done more to add houses than just about any area in California. So I do love the fact that we have a Riverside guy, and then we'll have a Riverside gal in charge there for two consecutive years. Let's make sure that we're heard very, very well. And is the Northern California version of SCAG, is that called NAG? Good job. Good job.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you, Clint. We appreciate the update.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate all the hard work that you do. And if you do think of anything that you would like to highlight in your cities as a result of collaboration between WRCOG and SCAG, and of course your local jurisdiction, please let me know. I want to be there to highlight it and highlight the great work that you are doing. Thank you all. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Was that you, Kevin? Okay.
Thank you,
We're
guys.
Move on to item 6C, that's overview of our PACE program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll note that Mr. Bass didn't have any theme music for me, but I'll continue on anyway. So in many,
Find some for you if you want.
no, thank you. I've had conversations with several of you over the last now 2.5 months regarding the PACE program, which is obviously a program that has taken more of your energy of late than it used to, and for the near term will continue to do so. One of the things that's become clear is that we have very varying levels of understanding and familiarity with PACE. So as I've had the conversations, it was clear to me that it was worth taking a few moments, if you will indulge me, to sort of go over a PACE 101. Those of you who've been around for a long time, you're unlikely to learn anything new. But those of you who are would like a refresher or for whom this is new, we would like to go ahead and provide that. And we have a PowerPoint that will work its way up in just a moment. And while we're doing that, I'll just jump right ahead and start. So we can go to the next slide. And for those in the room, I'm going to make it slightly bigger. There we go. So PACE itself is essentially just a way to help encourage and facilitate environmentally friendly equipment at people's home or in their business. Things like solar panel, insulation, windows, air conditioning systems, low flow toilet fixtures, energy efficient doors, all things that are listed within Title 22. It's property-based financing, so it allows homeowners who would not otherwise qualify for traditional financing the opportunity to go forward and get some of these things done, which one allows them to sort of reap the long-term benefits of efficiency, and two helps to meet some of the broader energy efficiency or climate goals that come along with things. In the next slide, the way it works, essentially we have the overarching set of rules from the state with AB 811, which establishes the authority for the PACE programs and the parameters. Based on your last conversation, we'll just sort of skip the state authority piece and leave that there. Local cities and counties have the obligation to opt in order for PACE to happen within their jurisdiction. So even though we have the state law authorizing, it doesn't count unless a particular city or county says, yes, it's okay to go ahead and do this here. The property owners then use the PACE financing for those improvements. There's sort of a salesperson who sort of gains the interest of the homeowner educates them. Then we have the contractor who actually does the construction and builds whatever the improvement is. The PACE provider, the one that you hear the most of for us is Renovate, because they were the largest residential PACE provider for us. They work with the contractor to vet them and to train them and through an enrollment process. They underwrite the financing at the request of the property owner. They verify the identity. And then WRCOG, our role is essentially to issue the bond. In the next slide, we have a number of quality control measures, and these have actually escalated over time. So they've increased, verifying the property owner identity, verifying that, yes, the property owner wants to do this, understands what's going on, verify that the contractor did go ahead and complete the process. In fact, the property owner signed a certificate of completion. Once that process is all squared away, there's a lien placed on the property. And then at the end of the lien, in many cases, it's a prepayment. We go through a process for getting that squared away. We contract with an organization called DTA, which calculates a funding estimate. We then turn to BB&K, who provides some legal services for us. Here at WRCOG, we initiate the release of the lien, and then the county releases the lien. When I say the county, I mean the county wherever the property is located. And as we'll discuss in the next slide, this goes beyond Riverside County. So it's not simply Riverside County who does that, but for any of the counties in which we work. Part of the criticisms of PACE, because there are criticisms, one is the FHA refusal to transfer liens, saying, look, I have a PACE loan on my house. I have a PACE lien on my house with an FHA loan, and in order to sell it, I've got to pay that off first rather than transfer it. That's been one of the criticisms. That's one of the things that has been a big issue for many realtors. In fact, in Bakersfield, the realtors successfully lobbied the city to exit the program. There have also, throughout the history of PACE, been allegations of either predatory practices or lack of quality control. And the next slide. So that's PACE overall, but there's actually both a residential and a commercial PACE, which are completely separate programs, even though they have a very similar construct. The players are very different. So WRCOG has had and still has a very vibrant commercial PACE program. Commercial PACE is very different. One is that it's eligible for new construction. The reason this is an issue, the reason it's so beneficial is that we end up in a lot of cases where we will work with our city partners who have a particular project they're trying to get in, and they just can't quite get the project to pencil. Sometimes the commercial PACE program helps to get them over the hump to make a project actually pencil. We don't do nearly the volume with commercial that we did with residential. So residential, we were going by thousands and tens of thousands, whereas commercial, we do, in a good year, about a dozen or so per year. These are very high dollar projects, and they're very highly sophisticated participants. So these are not the general layperson who may be engaged with a residential program, but on the commercial side, they tend to be fairly sophisticated players. And the next slide, we have the funding, taking a look at where the money comes from on the commercial PACE side. We have a project value assessment, essentially, of a revenue source of 70 basis points or 0.7% that comes to us for the project. We have that's incorporated into the cost of the issuance. We have a cap of $250,000. So if the project were extremely large, we would still cap how much WRCOG actually gets for that. There is the possibility of an admin fee. That authority currently exists, and that authority is currently set to 0. So WRCOG on the commercial side does not collect the admin fee. Providers, we've got 4 providers that have been in play. Twain, in fact, they did a $34 million project last year. Greenworks, Clean Funds, What's notable about Clean Fund is that they can only work within the WRCOG footprint rather than the statewide footprints, and they have not had any activity. And Lever has also not had any activity. So again, the commercial is not the portion that we've taken so much of your time with for the last couple of months or so. That program is going quite well. And on the next slide, it's actually the residential that we've had lots of issues with. WRCOG partnered with a company called Renovate America. I mentioned in the formation, there's the states enacting legislation, and then each individual city or county has to essentially sign on. Renovate America took a particularly aggressive sales approach. So they managed to go to throughout the state, 49 out of the 58 counties and 384 out of the 482 cities ended up signing up. Because we are a JPA, in order for them to come on board and be part of our footprint, to allow essentially Renovate America to go sell to them as part of the WRCOG agreement, they needed to be part of WRCOG. They became associate members of WRCOG. So essentially, the lion's share of the state, governmental agencies, city and county, are associate members of WRCOG. On the next slide, the program began in FY 2012, so 2011, 2012. Stopped enrolling new participants in 2021 at the direction of this committee. Renovate America had an evergreen contract, and they were essentially 97, 98% of our revenues. So you could say we sort of had all our eggs in one basket at one point. The trend, both from WRCOG and from the state, was to essentially do more things to protect consumers. We added between WRCOG, either on its own or at the behest of the state, increased the number of consumer protections, including audio recording of confirmed term calls, increased quality control. We added in ability to pay criteria to, again, ensure that property owners, homeowners in this case, had some realistic ability to actually pay for the lien that they had signed up to receive. We added additional documentation requirements. As you can think of it, sort of in the residential mortgage market, there was a tendency for some people to do sort of the no doc, the no documentation loans, and we've taken the position of no, we want to go ahead and do those other things. But as you can also imagine, that results in a significantly longer time for processing applications. In the next slide. 2016 was sort of a pivotal year because it kicked off a few things. So again, the landscape is we were in the process of sort of making it harder to go forward and get this stuff, saying, hey, you've got to have this additional paperwork, we've got to vet you and do all these different things. That's also when this committee decided to increase competition within the subregion. So we said, hey, we shouldn't have all our eggs in one basket. Let's let some other folks in. A company called Renew and a company called PFG. We went ahead and started that process with them. We have since terminated them in this year, 2021, at the direction of the board, not because of anything that they did or didn't do, but just because we made the decision to jump out of that market. Wide Green was another partner that never actually launched. And again, we haven't had any issues with those folks. You know, we don't have any complaints. We're not here to tell you bad things about any of those folks. Just the way that it worked out, we didn't end up doing those things. In addition, there was some market saturation from non-WRCOG PACE providers that came in. So adding that dynamic along with sort of the quality control piece made it more difficult for the program to continue on. Renovate sort of responded by offering a different program by the name of Benji, which was essentially a competing project. So it was sort of swinging the pendulum back the other way, back to sort of that no doc loan. It was a possible violation of the WRCOG agreement, but essentially this allowed for an unsecured process, less restrictive, decreased oversight, but it was faster approvals. But because we had nothing to do with Benji, we didn't compete. So Benji essentially siphoned off customers from us at the time that we were doing the quality control increases, and they had a way to sort of make things happen very quick. On the next slide, you can see particularly, so that was 2016. So you can see the numbers going from 17, 18 to 19, the number of assessments that we issued plummeted. So going from 25,000 in FY17 down to about 6,000 in FY19. But for the context, it's those things around it that happen. If you can go to the next slide, please. So throughout the process, there had always been some sort of mechanism for anyone who felt that something hadn't gone wrong. So either making an allegation, making a claim. WRCOG was not terribly involved in those because we had an indemnification agreement with Renovate America. So while those things happened, it wasn't something that we paid for, that we litigated, it just sort of happened. We were shielded from all those things. And that happened all the way up until December of last year when Renovate filed for bankruptcy. And in doing so, they are no longer honoring that indemnification agreement, which is why we have been bringing to you so many new things that you hadn't seen previously. Benji, that product that was then competing, that had some value, was then sold off by Renovate America. And the bankruptcy filing was a surprise to WRCOG. On the next slide. So on the money side, we're the bond issuer, not the bond holder. And that comes with some obligations, which we'll discuss a little bit later. We do have bond counsel, which helps us to monitor those obligations because we take them quite seriously. The revenue from PACE for WRCOG comes primarily from a project value of 1%, similar to the different percentage, but a similar construct to the commercial side. We take a 1% of the value that's incorporated in the cost of issuance. As a commentary to that, it means that we fund the program based on new people coming into it, which is one of those long-term fundamental mismatches that's sort of worth WRCOG considering long-term, because at some point when new customers stop coming in, we're still going to have some obligations to do a few things as we go forward. There's an administration fee that is assessed annually for those folks who are still actively servicing their PACE lien. Started off as $25 and is now either $90 or $95, depending on timing of when you entered your lien. The county still records the lien. DTA does our administrative calculations. BB&K takes care of our legal, and then WRCOG takes care of the admin piece that goes along with it. Next slide. For the delinquencies, this is an issue that you've seen many times. Essentially, if a homeowner is in a position where they fail to pay the lien, there is a bond holder out there who's left holding the bag. That's the agreement you have with First National, which essentially ensures that the bond holders are paid, which then avoids that foreclosure for the property owner. And there's a very small revenue piece that comes along with that for WRCOG. Next slide. In the event of a prepayment, there's an administrative fee for recording and doing some of those sorts of things. Typically, we've been averaging about 10,000 payoffs per year. Again, significantly high value. You think back to the commercial side where, a banner year was about a dozen per year. Here, we've been averaging a payoff of about 10,000 per year. Last year, we began with about 50,000 assessments, and this year we began with about 34,000 assessments. So again, single year is not enough to really measure a trend, but it was higher than what we have typically experienced. The initial fee was $175, now it's $225. Ironically, the actual cost is about $260. Then in the event of an overpayment, there's an additional fee of $25 that comes to WRCOG. And I bring it up much like the others, not because it's a significant piece by itself, but in order to make sure everyone's got sort of the full construct, I want to make sure you understand where all the money rests. And next slide. Actually, and that will do it. Now, this is the part where I would normally say, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And that's still true, but there's a caveat because as you're all aware, there is active litigation related to PACE. In fact, you're going to go into closed session in a few moments to have some of those conversations. To the extent that any of your questions have absolutely nothing to do with litigation and that sort of thing, fair game, happy to answer them. But if there's any question, I would prefer to answer those in closed session. We have Casey, who is our expert here as well. But I would defer to Mr. DeBon about figuring out where that line may be. But we're happy to answer questions in closed session as well for those things that should be kept under the privilege. Any other questions I'd be happy to answer. And with that, back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, does anybody have any non-legal questions for Kurt?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you, Janice. Well, obviously you did an incredible job.
All right, either that or they're just chomping at the bit to get Steve.
Okay, we will now move on to our report. I thought I saw Jeff up there. Is he up there or not? No, he had to be in mediation today, so we're gonna not have a TAC report. We'll move on to committee reports. Brian Teasdale for CalCog.
I don't have anything to report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Crystal, do you have anything for Sandbag? Nothing from Sandbag. Is Ted Hoffman up for softball or OL?
I have, Madam Chairman, I do. Just as update for all those agencies that want to participate in the Proposition 1 Integrated Regional Water Management Plan of Round 2 for allocations. We are going to be working on the scoring criteria next month in OWA, and then look for those scoring criteria and everything to be available starting after that, late October, and we'll take applications till January of 2022 for those funds that are going to be available. Also, I've noticed reading around that there are cities along the Santa Ana River that are planning to utilize the river for recreational or economic gains. Please reach out to SAPWA and to OWA. There are a lot of regional documentations and reports that were done on those areas. So especially when you're trying to plan your economic, your environmental impact reports, some of that material has already been done. And it's like with SAPA and OWA, it's one watershed. So what goes on upstream affects what goes on downstream. So we want to make sure that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as to say, but there is a lot of good information that is on the SAPA website. There's a full report on the assessing homeless impacts on water quality and repairing and aquatic habitat in the upper Santa Ana River watershed. And also the SAPA has gone ahead and commissioned to have some more monitoring done on those effects. So those reports are available. And then in the 2014, they did the Santa Ana River watershed report on Plan 2. So when agencies are looking to those economic and recreational uses of the Santa Ana River that border on there, please check on the SAPA and OWA website for that information. It may help you out and prevent a lot of headaches in the future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Ted, for all your work on this committee. It's been a breath of fresh air to have somebody take such an active involvement in it. So thank you.
It's water. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Benoit, AQMD.
Yeah, speaking of fresh air, at AQMD, we did have a meeting last week, but no major updates to report though. No major updates.
Okay, I don't know if anybody has anything more on SCAG. We did kind of go over a lot on SCAG already. Seeing none, we will definitely move on. We have executive committee report. I think with closed session, are we gonna report back out or we're gonna adjourn before closed session?
There will be no reportable action.
Okay, the main thing I want to bring up is this last couple of weeks have been extremely intense with the loss of our 13 servicemen. And I know that Kevin Bash has been actively involved, as well as Ted, as one of their Norco folks who is here within WRCOG, or the only WRCOG. Kevin, did you want to say just a couple of words? I know he's coming back on Friday, correct?
Yeah, Friday, he arrives at the Ontario airport at 2 o'clock, and they're planning he's gonna come down the 15 and then turn left on 6th Street. He's going to be buried at Crestlawn, not at the National Cemetery. His mother wants him close. And we're getting estimates of 10,000 people will show up, 300 motorcycles alone. And the schools are actually going to let all the kids out just to line 6th Street. So it's pretty emotional. And then Ted has been working his rear end off on all this. Ted, you have anything to say? There he is.
Thanks, Kevin. No, you said it all. It's honor, respect, and remember.
And he'll be buried Sunday at a small ceremony. So that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, when we go to adjourn, depending on how we end the meeting, I just wanted to make sure that we all know that we're going to adjourn in memory of Corporal Hunter Lopez, who's from the Coachella Valley, Riverside County, as well as Lance Corporal Dylan Barola, who's Rancho Cucamonga, since we're partnered with Inland Empire, and our own within our WRCOG sphere of influence is Lance Corporal Kareem Nakuri. So that's who Kevin and Ted were talking about. So 3 here within the Inland Empire and 1 here in Norco, which is WRCOG region. So I just wanted to make sure that we know that that's who we'll be adjourning in memory of. Okay. Kurt.
All right, actually, just one moment to thank the chair and the vice chair and Mr. Barajas and Mr. Bash. They have been very forthcoming with their time. I keep going to them for all sorts of different things. So we finally just set up some standing meetings. So they give way more time to WRCOG than they probably thought they ever would. And then
Amen.
And then the chair does even more. So I don't know how she's going to stop taking my calls soon. But so far, they've been very good sports. But I just wanted to acknowledge how much extra time they've been putting in as we sort of go through our transition phase.
Well, and I just wanted to let everybody know, if you haven't seen Kurt in your cities, if you've got an event, he has been everywhere that I have seen him at, from things in honor of Kareem, as well as the 9/11 programs. I know he was in River Valley, he was in Eastvale. Norco. So he had, so if you have an event or something and you want to share your city, because he's trying to learn so much, definitely he's out there trying to get his fingers and his whole body wet. The other thing Kurt and I have been talking about, as well as the leadership committee, is the strategic plan. We are looking forward to beginning the process, and what we're going to do is we're going to set a date that's going to work with the leadership. And when I keep saying leadership, it's the chair, the vice chair, second chair, and past chair, as well as Kurt. And we're going to have a meeting that's not tied to this meeting, and if those who's interested involved in the strategic plan, we want only those who want to. We don't want to waste people's time if you don't desire redirecting. And we'll set that date, invite everybody who wants to attend, and then we'll move on from there. So we were trying to figure out how to do it, whether to take a meeting up or whatever. And that's the kind of thought, is that some people don't want to be involved, and that's okay. Those who want to be involved, we certainly want to hear from you. So that we're going to begin the process probably in sometime in the first part of October. And we're going to try and get this done rather quickly. So we are looking at getting focused, and Kurt just wants to get down on the ground and run. So with that, are there any items for future agendas? Does anybody have any announcements? Oh, everybody's ready to leave. Okay, you can't leave. You can't leave. We have a closed session. That's very important. We have a special guest here to go over that. So we'll go ahead and close this meeting out and we will have it for closed session.